Eric and his son were looking for abalone on the east coast of Australia when everything went dark. In a matter of seconds, Eric had the realization that he was no longer just swimming in the murky water, but that he was also facing forward inside the mouth of a shark. In this video, we will tell you about the story of Eric Nerhus, who was caught by a shark while diving for abalone. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos. Cape Howe is a coastal headland in eastern Australia with a wild and dramatic landscape. Some people like to glide over the beautiful blue waters, while others enjoy diving deep into them to catch abalone. These divers don't know when the dangerous sea predators will strike. On January 23, 2007, 41-year-old Eric Nerhus, his son Mark, and other divers went shellfish hunting on Australia's southeast coast near the town of Eden. Eric managed to persuade a few of them that sharks wouldn't show up because the water was dirty. At Cape Howe, the crew docked at a spot they had been to over 100 times before. Eric thought it would be a great time to spend time with his son and teach him a thing or two. He put on his face mask and lead-lined weight vest and dove into the murky water. His son stayed in the boat to keep an eye out for sharks. Even the strands of seaweed in the water wouldn't stop him from doing his hobby. At 25 feet underwater, near the seafloor, he saw a line of abalones and started following them. He kicked his fins to propel himself more profoundly with his head facing the seafloor to ensure he only picked the correct size of abalones. In New South Wales, the law says that abalones must be at least 11.7 centimeters long to be legal to catch. As a sharp pain from his shoulders hit his brain, the regulator was knocked out of his mouth, cutting off his oxygen supply. It felt like a dark cave was closing in on him as the water shook up and down. Eric flailed his arms in the murky water, hurting him more. It was then that he realized he was in the mouth of a shark. The shark had swallowed his head first and was trying to pull him apart from the waist. Half of his body was in the shark's mouth, and one arm was sticking out. He felt the shark's teeth sink into his shoulders and pressure from the weight vest he was wearing. Evolution divers who spend more than 6 hours in the water wear lead-lined weight vests to counter buoyancy, which makes it easier for them to go down. These vests are better than weight belts because they spread the weight across the abdomen. This reduces the strain on the back. But Eric never in his life thought that this weight vest would save him from being bitten in half on this fatal day. More than 12 of the shark's teeth punctured the vest, but could not penetrate his flesh because the lead lining had taken most of the crushing force of the bite. His heart was pounding in his chest, filling his body with both fear and adrenaline. He was aware that he had a better chance of winning the lottery on this day than surviving the shark attack. But he was not going to stay still and let fate have its way. He blindly moved his hand over the shark's head until you felt the eye socket. He had finally found one of the shark's weakest points. Eric repeatedly poked the eye socket with his 2 stiff fingers. Startled and confused, the shark did not like the feeling of anything touching its sensitive eyes. He noticed the crack in the door, so he took advantage of the momentary break in the action. He struggled to free himself from the shark's tenacious grip, which was secured by its razor-sharp teeth. Nevertheless, the ordeal was not yet finished. Before he was completely free of the shark's mouth, part of his upper shoulders and head were clapped by the shark's powerful jaws. The shark's serrated rows of teeth crushed the faceplate of his mask into his nose, which resulted in the breaking of his nose. Before he was completely free of the shark's mouth, part of his upper shoulders and head were clapped by the powerful jaws of the shark. After that, the mask was swallowed up by the shark. there was yet a glimmer of hope because both of his hands were now free, and the majority of his body was no longer inside the shark's mouth. Eric first located the eyes of the shark with the use of his hands. Next, he grabbed the abalone hunting chisel he had brought along and pushed it into one of the shark's eyes. The stab from the chisel penetrated the target, and the shark was compelled to let him go as soon as it did. Because of his broken nose and open wounds, the water was dyed red all around him, and he needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Because he had been holding his breath for what felt like an eternity, the exertion caused his lungs to burn and his limbs to shake. He finally let out a sigh of relief. He grabbed his regulator and took a deep breath as he gasped for air. Immediately, his body, which was pumped full of adrenaline, began to relax as the tension and pressure that the water had been exerting against his muscles began to loosen up when it came into contact with oxygen. After that, he gently and steadily made his way to the surface of the water, kicking and splashing as he went so as not to excite the shark any further. Nevertheless, the shark wasn't finished yet. As he rose to the surface, he got a good look at the 10-foot great white shark following him and making tight circles around his flippers. The shark had enormous black eyes that were spherical and were 5 inches in diameter, and they were looking right at him. He shielded himself from the shark as he swam through the cloud of his own blood by clutching his abalone bag in his left arm and establishing a barrier between the shark and himself with the bag. After emerging from the water, Eric resembled a zombie due to the blood that was pouring out of his head, torso, and chest, as well as the fact that his wetsuit had been torn to shreds. He made a desperate plea for help. Eric was frantic to get away from these creepy waters, so he ordered his son, who was completely confused by the instruction, to accompany him to the shore. Eric received first aid from divers aboard a nearby boat, and one of the divers radioed for assistance as the other divers attended to his injuries. Eric was airlifted to Wollongong Hospital rather than the nearby Canberra Hospital because the helicopter needed to fly at a lower altitude. This was necessary because, at the higher height, his open wounds were more likely to suffer from decompression sickness, which could result in potentially fatal nitrogen bubbles in his blood at the hospital. Wollongong Hospital is located in Wollongong. This is due to the fact that his father was in the air at the time and was trying to call for assistance. Instead of being taken to the hospital in neighboring Canberra, Eric was transported by helicopter to Wollongong Hospital. Thanks to his fit physique, Eric was still aware and conscious despite the severity of his deep wounds and the amount of blood lost. His wounds were quite deep, and he had lost significant blood. Lacerations had been seen on both sides of his shoulders and on his left arm, chest, and torso. Before he was placed on the operating table, he was in stable condition and went on and on recounting his incredible escape to anyone who was willing to listen to him. His nose was also shattered, and the bite marks could be found all over his body. In order to repair the exceptionally deep punctures in Eric's flesh, he required a total of 75 stitches. Several weeks before the incident, aerial patrols had spotted them and evacuated swimmers from 3 beaches along the south coast due to the water's poor visibility. Experts believe Eric's attack was a mistaken identity because, according to his fellow diver and friends, sharks would often cruise above the unsuspecting divers as they searched for abalone. Never once had there been an attack such as this. The shark may have thought that he was a seal and went on attacking him. Eric's fight for survival was highly praised, and many people have described him as almost likely Australia's luckiest man. His experience is one of the many terrifying reminders of the dangers beneath the great oceans. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to share and press the bell icon for more regular updates.